Just to start from the beginning.
My favorite subject.
Yes.
First question. Just give us an idea of how this whole thing got started. Maybe a good place to start with that is, how did you guys kind of get together and come up with this idea?
Yes.
Because of you, your magazine.
Yeah, it is because of CCM.
Celeste Winstead called me and said that y'all wanted to do this, or it's her idea. I don't know, she may have forced it on you. I don't know how it happened. So I went over there to the studio, and I love the setup. 2 chairs facing each other, which I love. It was intimate, and he asked really good questions.
So you did not know Andrew before that?
No, I don't think we had actually officially met.
I don't recall meeting you. I mean, do you?
No, I don't. No, I don't recall meeting you either. I think it was the first time, which was part of maybe the experience of it and the chemistry of it, is that it was actually a first-time conversation. Of course, I knew Mark and his career and was definitely interested in where the conversation might go.
Well, you started off by saying you were nervous. You were scared about that. You kind of were nervous. And watch the front of the interview.
Yeah.
You said, I'm kind of nervous about this. And I was kind of took off guard. Like, why would you be nervous? I could see you being nervous for someone who doesn't know how to talk. That would be hard for an interviewer, I would think.
But you never know. You never know when you walk into something. There's terrible interviews, and I think we have lost the art of conversation in our culture in general. So then when you have an interviewee come into an interview, like Mark coming into that one, and I don't know him, I know of him, I know what he can do on stage, but what can you actually say from your brain and your heart, that's not planned. And Mark has a lot of unplanned thoughts.
They're all unplanned. I don't even know what I'm thinking until I hear myself say it. That is part of my routine too, so I just went back into my routine. But it's the truth. All of even my routine comes from the truth of my life, that I am a talk thinker. My mother was too. And I can hear myself talk and know what I'm thinking. But anyway, I called him one night and said, hey, let's do this. I was thinking about retiring. And I thought, well, I need to do something. And I know that through Facebook, I have found that you can sit on your couch, or your lazy boy in my case, and pull out your Facebook and do a live and reach more people than you'll ever reach in a tour in one moment.
Yeah.
So if it's really about reaching people, if you don't need the money, if you don't need to work, I thought, stay home and pull out this phone. And then I called him, and then it turned into all this.
Yeah, I think we thought...
We took it to a new level.
If there's going to be this... What I was hoping for, the level of conversation that we could actually have with the guests in the room. So going off the inspiration of that Mark and I are able to have good conversation, that we're conversationalists, and then to inspire that, encourage that in other people, I just started thinking, well, that's something... Because of where we are culturally, I would love for these to have posterity, to live in posterity, as a way to say, you can have these conversations at home too. There is not a subject you can't broach within the safety, within the sanctuary of the communion of conversation,
And eating, and we love both.
Yeah, and food.
And you bring up the word communion, and our readers would know you probably best through the Christmas things that we've done in the past, the Christmas and communion, and how you've kind of brought that idea out in print. So maybe give us an idea, in this medium, how communion ties into conversation, or how communion happens after conversation. Explain that a little bit.
I would start with, I think communion is a bit of posture. What I love and what I would like to bring in is this idea that we're all coming to the table curious about God, not sure of, we're still discovering. Hopefully, in a relationship, you're constantly discovering one another. In conversation, that's part of what conversation prompts, is discovery of one another. I'm asking you about you, you're asking about me, we're listening, we're interacting. I see communion as an interaction between us and God, where we're actually listening and talking as a conversation with God. And God's the one who set the table. Mark and I get to set the table for dinner conversations and invite our guests in. But God is the one through Jesus who has set the table for communion. And so we're all invited. That's why it's safe, because we're all invited, regardless of who you are, or where you've been, or what you've done, or any of that. I think. What do you?
The ground is level
Yeah.
at the foot of the cross. Yeah. Mama wrote that. She wrote that song. Anyway, she's dead, but she wrote that, and but it is true. I just, I think of it in more simple terms. That we just eat and talk, and hopefully it will go somewhere good. And if it doesn't, it'll hit the editing floor. I don't, I think what I want is for us to forget the cameras are even there. Like when I do a live video, I've never stopped down a video to change the tape. They better stagger the tapes because Mark ain't stopping. And the camera is just another seat, another set of eyes in the seat, right, in my eyes. They're just, that's, the people are watching. That camera is a person.
Well, and I love how you intro the dinner conversations too with, we have an open seat at the table.
And through Facebook Live and through all these, everybody can comment. So we know what they're thinking, they're adding to. It is a conversation. They just do it from their homes on their computer or their phone and join the conversation.
To learn the art of something like conversation, it was exampled to me as a kid growing up. My dad would sit around the table with us at dinner and say, what do you feel about this? What do you think about this? Even as a 6-year-old, I was asked how I felt about something as if I had what I was thinking and feeling was a legitimate response in a very adult world. That was set, so that table was set for me early on, an example. I think what we want to do with the show is also do, some of the people were not invited to a safe place around the table, have not
And
known
still
what,
aren't.
right, and know what healthy conversation is. And that may be in their church, they're not able to have good conversation, it may be at home. And so what we want to say is this table is that safe place. And maybe that will inspire in them, or prompt in them even the courage to begin conversations that can be hard to start. But we think once you start them, that there can be a safe place there to learn new things.
And we were joking about this in a way earlier, but I mean, you had this isn't just kind of talking about the weather stuff. I mean, there's a little bit of that just to kind of break the ice, but I mean, just recently you had Sandy Patty at the table and you were talking about blended families and those conversations we don't hear a lot in kind of our, CCM
industry
circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
There's a lot of divorced people out there.
Yeah.
So we got to think about blended families, and I think that episode is one of my favorites because she laid out some wisdom. I mean, for anybody going through that of trying to blend two different families, I think you should see that episode because it's quite amazing stuff I didn't ever think about because I have never been a part of a blended family.
She kept saying how what she and her husband, her second husband Don, now do for others as people ask their advice. She says, here's what not to do. So maybe through some of our conversation, you share, people are sharing their experience and their wisdom, and maybe someone else gets a leg up. Maybe they're still young and not married yet, or maybe they're thinking about marriage, and through the wisdom and experience that's displayed through the conversation, maybe they get to avoid, but painful things and learn from someone else and then implement that in their own life. If we don't talk, we don't learn anything.
All right, so why is it so important to listen?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I seldom do it. Go ahead, answer me.
You do, in your own way. I think when we listen, there's a posture of humility in that too. Like when I actually concertedly say, Andrew, stop talking and listen. One, I am telling that person, just with my body language, with my focus, that you are important. What you have to say is valuable, even if we disagree, and even if we vehemently disagree. I'm saying, but you are valuable. And I think that in turn inspires in that person a respect for me as well. They may not agree with everything about me. They may not agree about things in my life, or they may not agree about, all the things we disagree about, everything from politics to social topics to denominations. We have a lot of disagreements. When you listen, it inspires us to actually see what I think is common about us. It brings us together. And it also says to me, it reminds me, my voice is not the only voice out there. It's not the only idea out there. And it's not the most important one.
I think listening, it's impossible to have a conversation if you're not listening. because it's a monologue if you're not listening.
What?
It's a monologue if you're not listening.
Tell us about your experience with dinner conversations on the other side of the table. You know, in your career.
Well, you have to read up on people, and you have to know who you're talking to and what you're talking about. But it's fun because I am usually the one being asked the questions, and it's fun to dig a little deeper in somebody else's life and find out what brought them to this place. Because that's really what you need. Before you, see, I was raised to worry that everyone I met, if I didn't tell them about the Lord, their blood would be on my hands, all right? And since I have realized that that is not my responsibility to save anybody, I have more opportunities to tell people about the Lord because I'm listening. When I meet someone, I first say, "How are you? How did you get here? Where are you headed?" Usually on a plane or something. What you're going to see your grandkids? Isn't that fun at Thanksgiving? I just met a lady on the flight to Nashville yesterday. But we talked about this, and you find out where they come from, what brought them to this place. How did your lives intersect? Don't ask that question. That might scare them. But it's all, could lead to a really deep, wonderful conversation where you could plant seeds in someone's life. You don't always have to harvest. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to harvest, so we have that notch on our belt. I had 35 saved this weekend. Instead of just, hey, sometimes you water. Sometimes you plant. And every now and then you get to harvest and see someone come to know the Lord.
Well, and actually I was going to ask you a similar question to that. But you had mentioned that it's fun to be on the other side of the table and to dig a little deeper and to do some research.
And it's fun to be dug into, too. I enjoy that because like he dug in on that one we had to where it made me think of things I'd never asked myself. And then I got to hear what I believe on that. Mm-hmm. And so I like that. And so it's fun to dig and it's fun to be dug.
Well, you talk about the lady on the plane and us listening and learning to listen, and which inspires good conversation. I think conversation, that kind of dialogue and interaction with people can create an open channel for the Spirit of God to do. The Spirit of God is beyond my comprehension and how it works and moves, and so then that takes away my responsibility too. So to have interactions with people that then gives this open platform for the Spirit to do what He's going to do, I get to just relax into it and enjoy it, you know?
Nobody's eternity is now resting on my shoulders, and it used to. I can just love people for where they are and maybe turn them 1 degree even, but it's a little bit, and I don't have to. I can leave. Oh, I'll tell you a story. I was with Tony Campolo. We were in England, right? And this guy walks out, complete God thing. I've never seen anything like this. This guy walks up to us out of nowhere and starts talking to us about the Lord, but he needed the Lord. And that's what he evidently knew Tony had some anointing or something, I don't know. But starts talking to Tony and me about the Lord. And we left, we prayed with the guy. He didn't come to know the Lord in that moment. And it was the most horrendous story. This guy came from nowhere and he was going to nowhere. Where he came from, there was no family, and he was headed to a place there was no family, no one waiting for him. It was a very sad story. And Tony left that moment. I left heavy, kind of sad for the fella. Tony left skipping. And I said, how do you hear something like that and it doesn't weigh you down? He said, he's not my problem, which was kind of cold and awful.
Sure, it sounded like it.
But it's the truth. He's God's problem. You're not my problem. You're not my kid. You're God's kid. I'm not going to spank you because you're not my kid. And boy, that frees you up when you realize, you know what, I'm going to tell you the good news, but you can believe it or not.
We stop seeing
not
people's
my problem.
projects. Yeah, and then they're not our projects.
And that way I can love you without an agenda. It isn't love if there's an agenda.
Yeah.
It isn't love. If the only reason I love you is so I can win you to my way of thinking, that's not love.
It's manipulation.
You know, I want to
it's
love you. I
control.
want to learn to love without an agenda. And that will woo the bride to the bridegroom. But you don't do that by scaring her.
So I would assume there were more surprises in this than expected, probably.
Yeah. I think the one we did with Nicole C. about race in the church was really a beautiful conversation. One I didn't quite expect. I know Nicole, but didn't necessarily know she had that level of depth of thought about that specific issue. And she said some really profound things about race in the church, and talk about, again, as having a safe place for conversation. You know, two white guys and an African American woman, and being able to sit down and just talk, and not even that race be a thing. So that was cool. The Point of Grace girls are always easy to talk to, and have a lot more depth of thought than I think a lot of their fans, than they've ever been encouraged to talk about, you know? I mean, we were talking about
the Bible.
Yeah, and
we're going into it.
Old Testament and New Testament, and how are those congruous? How are they unalike? What does it mean? You know, I don't know. It's all been interesting. There's a lot of
And I don't know that
people.
we've cut too deep yet either. I think we could cut deeper as we go along, learn how to do that. How to get close to offending, but don't. You know, just cut a little deeper. Just go are we really getting to the bottom of this?
Yeah.
And we may never, but it's fun trying.
Yeah.
You know.
From an industry standpoint too, I mean, I think something like this is important and needed, and whatever you want to call our little world, if you want to put boundaries on it, I guess.
Well, I attribute, Mark, some of that, because I'm still in the ring, kind of finding my way, and very achievement oriented, and to do something like this, and just to be encouraged to do it because there are good things that come from it. That conversation is important. I mean, I think that has been a large part of what you've spoken into me about this, whether you knew it or not, is because it's to actually see the value of the content, not are we number one, are we selling as many as we should, because you're in a more relaxed place in your life and career, and you may have always been there, I don't know. Helps you relax. So, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm still in the, where we're at in our place of life. Does that make any sense to you? Like, we're still kind of clawing a little bit,
I remember when I had the drive. I do. But it was never about the money. It was never about money. It's never been about money. I'm thankful for the money. But I thought I'd be sleeping on preachers' couches for the rest of my life. I've done what I loved, and the money came to me, and that's the truth. And what I believe, I really believe this. I'm not in this music because I couldn't make it in some other kind of music. I love this music. I love this message.
So we shouldn't talk about getting your start in hip hop.
Yeah, right. Wouldn't that? Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
I would like to.
Or rock and roll, or any of it.
You did do a rap song though, didn't you?
Oh, before there was rap, I wrote the first song I ever wrote was a rap song because I couldn't write music, and I didn't know anybody who could, so I just talked it. It's about David and Goliath. It's called "Too Big to Miss," and it's a good song.
Do you remember it?
Oh yeah. Story is told in the Bible about a mighty king, how when he was just a little boy, he played around with a sling. Well, he got up early one morning, and before the sun had set that day, a nasty old giant had lost his head, and his body lay cold on the clay. When now David went to the battlefield, his big brother said, "Stay away. You've got no business out here, David, so go back home and play." But David said, "Step aside, boys. I'm going to take that giant on." But his brother said, "Obey your elders, David. Get back home where you belong." Oh, but David said, "That giant ain't going to make fun of my God and King. I'm going to find me 5 smooth stones. I'll play a while with my sling. I'm going to challenge that devil in the name of the Lord. And when he's dead, I'll take his sword, chop off his head, and let the world know Jehovah is the Lord." Well, his brother said, "David." Anyway, it goes on.
Somebody get Lecrae on the phone.
How do you remember that? Yeah, that could be your second wind.